In the bustling city of Brookhaven, there was an urban legend about a peculiar red string. They said if you found one tied to your door, you should never untie it. Instead, leave your home immediately and never return.
Few believed the story, dismissing it as a tale to frighten children. Samantha, a freelance writer,
Moved into an old apartment complex on the outskirts of the city.
she was drawn to its charm: creaky wooden floors, vintage light fixtures.
And large bay windows.
Her new neighbors were polite but oddly reserved.
Avoiding small talk and keeping their doors shut tightly. One chilly evening,
After finishing a late-night writing session, Samantha went to lock her front door and noticed something strange. A thin red string was tied tightly around the doorknob, its loose end trailing across the floor and out of sight under the doorframe. Curious, she bent down to examine it.
the string looked frayed and old.
As though it had been there for years, Samantha chuckled to herself, remembering the urban legend she'd overheard at a nearby CF earlier that week. Guess someone's playing pranks, she muttered, pulling out a pair of scissors. Ignoring the whispered warnings in her memory, Samantha snipped the string. As soon as the blades cut through, a cold gust of air swept through the apartment, blowing out her candles and plunging her into darkness. Her phone's flashlight illuminated the room as she
Nervously scanned for an open window or draft. But everything was shut tight.
Then she heard it faint.
Rhythmic tapping coming from her bedroom. Her heart raced as she crept toward the sound. Each step felt heavier than the last.
When she pushed open the bedroom door, she saw nothing at first. Then her eyes fell on the mirror above her dresser.
A shadowy figure stood just behind her reflection, though the room was empty.
Its hand was outstretched, pointing to her bed.
Frozen with fear.
Samantha hesitated before looking.
There, lying perfectly centered on her bed,
Was the red string she had just cut, now tied into an intricate knot.
the tapping grew louder, now coming from the window.
Samantha turned to see streaks of blackened fingerprints smearing the glass from the outside, for her apartment was on the 6th floor. Gripping her phone tightly,
She backed out of the bedroom and ran toward the door. She fumbled with the lock, her hands shaking. When she noticed something horrifying, the red string was no longer just on her. The tapping grew louder, now coming from the window.
Samantha turned to see streaks of blackened fingerprints smearing the glass from the outside, as if something was trying to get in. Her breath quickened.
She grabbed her phone.
Dialed the building's emergency contact and waited as the line rang endlessly.
The tapping stopped. Silence filled the air.
Then, from behind her,
The mirror cracked with a sharp snap.
she whipped around to see the figure in the mirror moving, its hand pressing harder against the glass as if trying to break through. Samantha screamed and bolted from the room, slamming the door behind her. Her phone buzzed. A message lit up the screen: "You were warned." She didn't recognize the number, but she didn't care. She needed to leave. She ran to the door, only to find it wouldn't budge.
The air grew heavier, colder, suffocating her with each passing second. The red string was back, tied neatly around the doorknob, glowing faintly in the dim light.
Samantha's trembling hands reached for it.
But the moment her fingers touched the string,
An unseen force yanked her backward.
she hit the ground hard. The wind knocked out of her.
From the shadows of the hallway,
The figure emerged. Its form was indistinct.
flickering as if it didn't fully belong in this world.
It stretched a hand toward her, bony fingers holding the severed piece of red string she'd cut earlier.
"Return it," the figure hissed, its voice an otherworldly rasp. Samantha scrambled to her feet, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know how," she cried.
The figure pointed to the bedroom. The knot.
The intricate knot on the bed. Gathering her courage, Samantha darted back into the bedroom.
The knot seemed alive, writhing as if it were breathing.
She hesitated, her hands hovering above it. Unsure what to do. "Undo it," the voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere.
Her shaking fingers worked at the knot,
Untangling the loops. With each strand she loosened, the air seemed to grow warmer.
the oppressive darkness lifting ever so slightly.
Finally,
The knot came undone. The figure let out a deafening wail. and the room erupted in a blinding flash of light. When Samantha opened her eyes, she was outside, standing in the middle of the street. Her apartment building loomed behind her. But something was different.
The windows were dark, lifeless.
And the red string was nowhere in sight.
She turned to leave, vowing never to return. As she walked away, she glanced back one last time. In the corner window of her apartment, she saw the figure standing motionless, watching her. Its hand was pressed against the glass and on the doorknob.
A fresh red string had been tied.